I've read the comments. So here we are. We're finally doing it. Here are my initial thoughts on ACC. I've been reading the comments. I know a lot of you have been wanting me to give my feedback on ACC, and here we are. We're finally going to do it. I put some time into playing the game, and I feel like I have a good enough assessment now where I can give you my feedback and my feelings on the game, especially with the 1.9 update, which supposedly revolutionized the game and changed it completely. So I gave it a go, and these are my thoughts. I'm going to break it down to the good things, the things that I feel are tunable and probably could be adjusted, and the stuff that just really I don't connect with. So let's break that down. We'll start with the good stuff. Right off the bat, I think we can all agree that the graphics are some of the best graphics of any sim racing game on the market. So, I mean, there's not really a discussion there. It's amazing. The graphics are nice. The loading time is phenomenal. You know, the layout, it's just user friendly. It's really, really easy to navigate. So that's a definite plus for me. It does look pretty. We have rain. We have all sorts of different textures. The grass is nice. It's 3D grass. But most of the time, I'm not really playing a game for how pretty it is. I want to know how good does it drive. But we're going to get to that later on. This game is using an engine that is made for 2023 at the time of filming this video, which is great, which makes it beautiful. There's a lot of texture, there's rain, not that the rain, we'll get to that in another video, but I don't find that the rain is very realistic. Maybe the visibility is, but aside from that, the driving feedback in the rain, what's cool is that there's actual, I'd say the best part about the physics of the game would be the tire thermal model. Let's just isolate it to that. It's really awesome that you can have a little bit of variation with tire pressure. You really need to pay attention. And in real life, that's a huge element. It's actually probably the most important aspect on the setup of the car. You can have the perfect spring package, the right damping, everything. But if your tire pressures aren't in the window, the tires aren't going to work and you're not going to have the grip. You won't have the tire wear, you won't have the grip. So that part of it is incredible. I love that you can fine-tune the tire pressures and just get it in that sweet spot for the pressure and temperature. So that's a huge win. But I would say in terms of physics, it really just stops there. Moving on to the stuff I feel is tunable, but not quite spot on, and I think overdone in many ways, is the sound. The sound it's just oversaturated. There's too much going on. I find that when you pass by a wall that normally you wouldn't ever have reverb off of, you have like insane reverb and you hear it in the cockpit. I think that's something you can probably tune out, but inside the real race car, I mean, this is what it sounds like. This is what it sounds like inside an ACC cockpit.
Green light. Go, go, go. Car on the left.
You can hear the difference. Like in the real car, there's a lot more engine noise and transmission noise, whereas in ACC, you hear tires squeal, you hear debris on the road, you hear marbles shooting up. When we're in the cockpit of the car, you really don't hear that stuff. You don't hear the reverb off the wall unless you're on a street circuit with side pipes, which the AMG has side pipes, but you have to be, inches off the wall to get that sort of reverb effect coming into the cockpit. I just find that it's overdone, and I can understand why it's like that. I think it's catered to just exaggerate and amplify your senses and the feeling inside the car, and that's totally fine. It does give you a cool, larger-than-life experience, which, I mean, it's like a cell phone camera. You can have one that's sharper and more flat colors, or you can have ones that are over saturated and just over edited or overdone. So it's just personal preference, and it's what you like as a driver or as a user of the game. Force feedback is another thing. I tried my best to fine-tune the settings. I just don't know if I ever arrived at the right ones to dial out this one particular feeling that I have through the middle of the corner. And it's like this wobbling effect. I don't know if they're trying to simulate sidewall wobble or deflection, but it just seems off-putting to me, where I just don't know what's going on, and it's almost like a numb damping, like it's a dampening effect where I don't know actually what's happening underneath me. And I think with more hours in the game, I might be able to get past that, but it just doesn't feel natural for me coming from the real car into ACC and driving it. It just, there's something off with the wheel. Like I said, I've tried everything on my SimuCube software to try to mitigate that issue, but for some reason, it's just not possible to get rid of it, and could be something that I'm missing. I'd love to know if any experienced ACC users are watching this, if you could help me in the chat. Maybe we could help mitigate this issue. But for now, my initial thoughts, like out of the box, I tried a few things in the settings. I've tried my SimuCube software, and I just could not, for the life of me, get rid of this like mid-corner wobble effect. And you can see it clear as day that it's happening. It's just really off-putting, and I don't know if it's something that can be tuned out or if it's just part of the game. Lastly, for those of you who have motion, I mean, the motion is okay, but I feel like it's a little slow. I don't know why. The reason why I love motion on other platforms like iRacing, for instance, is because it's really, really quick. And for some reason, it feels just really slow and too over-dampened. And no matter what I've done with the settings, I just can't make it really quick and sharp to change directions to get that feeling of the car moving around. So, I mean, again, it's a smoother experience, but it's almost so smooth where it feels like I'm on a boat sailing through the ocean. It's just not useful because it's not quick enough, and that's the only reason why I started using motion in the first place, is because the D-Box I'm using is quick enough where it gives me a really sharp input, and I feel like I'm getting that sensation of like G-loading through the corner. So although it doesn't travel much, it's very quick, and that's what's good about the motion, but I just feel like it's lacking a little bit on ACC. Now let's get into the driving behavior and performance. I think that's what most of you are waiting for, and I think everything in terms of driving, everything starts with braking. And if you don't have the right tempo and timing on the brakes, then it just completely falls apart. At the end of the day, the brakes are what separate the good drivers and the bad drivers or the average drivers. So having the technique on the brake and being able to manipulate the car and rotate the car in on the brakes is everything for me. The timing, the pressure, the release, the timing of the release. And I just find that every type of corner, I found myself braking with high pressure, higher than normal pressure, and sustained 100% pressure. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the actual pressure is in terms of, what you're pressing on your pedals. It's all about the variation in the types of corners: high speed, medium, low speed, high grip, low grip, medium grip kind of corners. I just found I was braking at 100% all the time, and that was the most efficient for me. Going to a fast corner, a dab of 100%, and then release was the most efficient way to keep the balance on the car and to get through the corner. Whereas in real life, in the same kind of corner, you would use, let's say, the equivalent in percentage, because we don't use percentage in the real car, we're using pressure, and it's very dynamic based on grip, based on tires, based on temperature, track temp. So there's a lot more variables, but for the most part, in a corner on ACC, you would go 100%. In real life, you might go with the equivalent of 20%. So there's a difference in the timing, the technique, and that is something that took me so long to get used to. And I feel like I don't want to drive ACC for an extended period of time because of that. I'm not the type of driver where I smash the pedal down and just ride the ABS all the time. I just don't find that it's the most efficient way to drive. What separates the elite drivers from the average drivers, it's understanding where that threshold is on the pedal, not just mashing the pedal down to 120 bar and letting the ABS do the work. It's maybe going to 80 bar, which is the threshold where the grip limit is, and maybe being a little bit over, but releasing to that threshold and balancing on the threshold as the grip goes down because the downforce drops and you start bleeding the pedal off. Whereas I find in ACC, you just keep your pedal down and brake at 100% for a long period of time. So the timing is off, and I just think that that is a deal breaker for me in terms of realism. Doesn't mean that it's not fun. Okay, so if we distinguish the difference between fun and realism, it's fun, but it's not realistic. So let's just split those two. I'm not saying it's a terrible game. I'm saying it's fun, but it's not realistic. Moving on to the mid-corner performance. I think that, I mentioned before with the force feedback being awkward and having this like wobbling effect. I'm not quite sure, and I think it's due to like my lack of experience driving on ACC. Intuitively, everything I'm feeling, it says that it's just something's off. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it just feels numb. That's just the only thing. I don't feel a sense of connection to it, where I just don't know where the grip is. I don't understand it yet, and it's just not intuitive. Being a driver that drives that car in real life, you would think a simulation software, you would want it to be intuitive, where you jump in and go with almost like a seamless transition, but I just find that there's something off. I don't know if it's just over dampened where you don't feel anything, or if I just don't have enough experience. It's hard to say. I just know that my intuition's telling me that something's wrong there, where it's like numb and over dampened. It's almost like the game wants you to feel a certain way or a certain feeling, but coming right from the real car recently at Circuit of the Americas, I don't see it. I just don't feel that connection. So not much else I can really elaborate on. It's just more of a feeling thing for me. And if I want to pin it down to one particular thing, I feel like it's over dampened. In terms of on throttle performance, it's a tough one. It's almost continuing with that trend of being over dampened from the mid corner. It definitely is nicer than, I would say, iRacing off the corner, mainly because the thermal model on the tire, I feel like it's more forgiving, which is nice. You can be a bit more aggressive off the corner, which in real life we're pretty aggressive off. In iRacing, there's a very particular, or in other sims, I'm not really sure in the other sims, but I know in iRacing there's a very particular way you would accelerate, and I'd say at least it's a technique that is more in line with how I would typically drive in real life. Step throttling, let's say. So getting to a certain percentage, locking the diff, and throttling up the rest. It's more in line with how I would drive in real life, whereas in ACC, I'm, again, not a lot of experience on throttle, but it is more forgiving based on the thermal model. The tires don't overheat if you have one slide. In iRacing, if you slide on entry, you just write the corner off in the next 10 seconds after that. So I think we can agree on it. The tire temperature thing on iRacing is like something that needs to be worked on. In ACC, it's great because I feel like you could slide a little bit more and hustle the car probably in the corner. Even though it's a bit numb, it doesn't punish you on exit. So at least you have more forgiveness on exit. I just don't quite know what the technique is or what the ideal technique is. It's just not something I'm very comfortable with yet. So intuitively, it just doesn't feel right. Again, over dampened, numb. That's the only thing I can put my finger on. Mid corner and on throttle is a little bit numb, but I do like that it's forgiving with the throttle, with the tire temperature. Just feel like you can drive it a little bit harder and just have a little bit more fun throwing it around. That just about wraps up my initial thoughts on ACC. It is cool. I love playing it now. Well, maybe not love. I enjoy playing it. It's fun. Okay? And I think we can distinguish, like I said, the difference between fun and realistic. It is fun to race. I've been doing some community races with some people within the Morad community, and it is a ton of fun. But realism, it's still a little bit far away from that. There's certain great elements like the graphics, the loading time, the UI is really nice, I find. The sound is a little bit overdone, a little oversaturated, and the force feedback and motion is a little odd or off-putting to me. I feel like maybe with a little fine-tuning it can be adjusted, but the thing that kills it for me in terms of a realistic simulator is just the driving and the car behavior and characteristics. Although it's gotten a little bit better, it's still not where it needs to be in terms of the brake timing and just the cadence of everything that goes on through the corner. Also, that lack of feel for me mid-corner. Again, it could be something that I'm doing wrong. And just so you know, I don't have stability control on because that has been an issue. If you know, you know. I tried it without stability control, okay? I know what I'm doing now. No, it's fun. It's not realistic. We'll leave it at that. I'd love to know what you guys think about it. Is there a perfect sim? No, there is no perfect simulator software. If we can blend them all together, we probably arrive at something pretty close. But at the end of the day, it's really what it comes down to. Are you team iRacing? Are you team ACC? Can we all live happily together? Is that possible? It doesn't have to be so separated. We can all just have fun and enjoy playing video games at the end of the day. We're driving pretend race cars. That's a lot of fun, and I thoroughly enjoy it. At the end of the day, racing is racing. It doesn't matter how it feels or what it does. It's how you're enjoying it.